You have fallen asleep thousands of times in your life. You have never once felt what makes it happen. Approximately 30 to 60 minutes before you lose consciousness, before the last coherent thought dissolves and the first hypnic jerk announces the threshold between waking and sleep, your hands and feet become slightly warmer. Not dramatically. 1 to 2 degrees Celsius warmer than they were an hour earlier. The skin flush is subtle enough that you would only notice it if you were specifically looking for it. Most people never look. At the same moment your hands are warming, your core body temperature, the temperature of your deep organs, your brain, your visceral cavity, is falling. The warmth moving into your extremities is heat leaving the core. The body is not heating up. It is redistributing heat from the inside to the outside, using the skin surface of the hands and feet as radiators to dump excess thermal energy into the environment. This redistribution is not accidental. It is the sleep onset mechanism. The preoptic area of the hypothalamus, the same region that controls your core temperature across the day, setting the 37 degrees Celsius set point that your metabolic processes assume, receives a circadian signal approximately 2 hours before your habitual sleep time and begins actively reducing that set point. The target the preoptic area is moving toward is approximately 36 to 36.4 degrees Celsius for the core, a drop of 0.6 to 1 degree from the waking afternoon peak. To achieve this drop, the preoptic area activates the vasomotor neurons that control blood vessel diameter in the skin of the hands and feet. The arterioles in the palms and soles dilate. Blood that was circulating through the core and returning to the heart through the venous system is now being directed to the large surface area of the hands and feet, where it loses heat to the environment through convective and radiative cooling. The core temperature falls. Sleep onset approaches. Kurt Croce at the Psychiatric University Clinics in Basel, whose research on the relationship between distal skin temperature and sleep onset latency has been among the most precisely conducted in sleep physiology, documented this cascade in a landmark paper published in Nature in 1999. His group showed that the degree of vasodilation in the hands and feet in the hour before sleep onset was the single strongest predictor of sleep onset latency, how quickly the person fell asleep, out of all the physiological variables they measured. People whose hands and feet warmed most rapidly in the pre-sleep period fell asleep fastest. People with constricted peripheral vessels, cold hands and feet at bedtime, showed delayed sleep onset. The mechanism is the thermoregulatory system using the body as its own cooling apparatus, with the sleep pressure that has been building across the waking day providing the signal to the preoptic area that it is time to begin the temperature descent. You cannot fall asleep unless the core cools. The cooling requires the heat to go somewhere. It goes to the hands and feet. They are warm. You sleep. This is the mechanism that has been operating every night of your life. It is the mechanism that most modern sleep environments are inadvertently disrupting. If you're enjoying this story so far, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from. I love hearing from you. The preoptic area of the hypothalamus is a small region approximately the size of a marble, sitting just above and behind the optic chiasm, where the optic nerves cross. It is the thermostat of the body, the region that receives thermal input from peripheral sensors in the skin and from central thermosensors on the preoptic neurons themselves, integrates the information, compares it to the temperature set point, and generates the autonomic outputs that bring the body temperature toward its target. What makes the preoptic area unusual is that it is also the primary sleep switch of the brain. The same neurons that regulate body temperature, the GABAergic inhibitory neurons of the ventrolateral preoptic nucleus within the preoptic area, are the neurons that, when active, inhibit the wakefulness-promoting regions of the brainstem and basal forebrain, allowing sleep to occur. When preoptic area neurons fire, they simultaneously reduce body temperature set point and inhibit wakefulness. The two actions are not separate programs running in parallel. They are executed by the same neurons through overlapping mechanisms. Clifford Saper at Harvard Medical School, whose research on the sleep switch model has defined the modern understanding of sleep-wake circuit biology, described this architecture in work published in Nature in 2001 and subsequently refined across years of follow-up research. His flip-flop switch model showed that the preoptic area and the wakefulness-promoting regions of the brainstem mutually inhibit each other. When one is active, it suppresses the other, creating the stability of either being fully awake or fully asleep, rather than constantly fluctuating between the two. The thermal coupling of this circuit means that the conditions required for preoptic area activation, for the sleep switch to flip, include the right thermal environment. If the ambient temperature is too warm, the body cannot lose heat efficiently through the skin surface. The core temperature cannot drop toward the sleep onset target. The preoptic area, receiving thermal feedback that the core is not cooling, does not activate with full force. The wakefulness-promoting regions of the brainstem remain partially disinhibited. Sleep is delayed, lightened, or fragmented. This is the mechanistic explanation for why sleeping in a warm room consistently produces worse sleep quality than sleeping in a cool room. Not because warmth is intrinsically arousing, but because warmth prevents the core temperature drop that the preoptic area's sleep switch activation depends upon. The sleeping brain is not merely resting, it is running at a specific temperature that determines the depth and quality of its repair cycles. Prevent the temperature from reaching that level, and the repair runs at reduced capacity. The optimal ambient temperature for sleep in most adults is approximately 15 to 19 degrees Celsius, cooler than most people keep their bedrooms, and substantially cooler than the ambient temperatures common in the summer months or in climates without air conditioning. At these temperatures, the body can lose heat efficiently from the exposed skin surface. The core temperature reaches its nadir of approximately 36 to 36.2 degrees Celsius in the early morning hours, and the slow-wave sleep architecture that depends on this temperature range achieves its maximum depth. Adenosine is the molecular accumulation of wakefulness. As neurons fire throughout the waking day, ATP, adenosine triphosphate, the cell's energy currency, is consumed and metabolized, and adenosine accumulates in the interstitial space of the brain as a byproduct of neuronal activity. The adenosine receptors on neurons in the basal forebrain detect this accumulation and produce inhibitory signals that increase sleep pressure, the subjective experience of tiredness that builds across the waking day. Caffeine works by blocking adenosine receptors without activating them, preventing the adenosine from signaling sleep pressure, while the adenosine itself continues to accumulate. When the caffeine clears, approximately 5 to 7 hours after consumption, given caffeine's half-life, the blocked receptors suddenly have access to the accumulated adenosine, producing the rebound tiredness that follows caffeine wearing off. The adenosine was there all along. The caffeine was temporarily preventing the brain from reading it. The connection between adenosine and body temperature that most sleep content misses is that adenosine signaling in the preoptic area directly activates the thermoregulatory mechanisms of sleep onset. Adenosine A1 receptors in the preoptic area neurons, when activated by the adenosine that has accumulated across the waking day, promote the vasodilation of the peripheral vessels that initiates the core temperature drop. The adenosine that accumulates from a day of neuronal activity is not only signaling sleep pressure through the conventional tiredness pathway, it is also activating the thermoregulatory cascade that actually produces sleep onset. This explains an observation that experienced insomniacs will recognize: the frustrating sequence in which you feel genuinely tired. Adenosine pressure is high, the subjective experience of needing sleep is present, but you cannot fall asleep. The tiredness is real, the adenosine is there. But if the ambient temperature is too warm, or the feet are too cold from peripheral vasoconstriction, or the light environment has suppressed the circadian signal to the preoptic area, the thermoregulatory pathway that adenosine is supposed to trigger is blocked at the implementation step. The signal is sent. The execution is prevented by the thermal environment. Kreutz's subsequent work, published in Psychophysiology in 2000, showed that warming the feet of poor sleepers, literally applying a warm pad to the feet, produced peripheral vasodilation, accelerated core temperature drop, and reduced sleep onset latency by an average of 15 minutes, in subjects with difficulty falling asleep. The treatment was thermal, not pharmacological. The mechanism was the thermoregulatory sleep coupling that adenosine activates and that foot temperature modulates. The warm foot bath before bedtime that generations of grandmothers in various cultures recommended is not folk medicine. It is applied thermoregulatory physiology. The heat applied to the feet produces vasodilation in the peripheral vasculature, facilitates the core to periphery heat transfer that the sleep onset mechanism requires, and allows the core temperature drop to proceed more rapidly. The feet are warm, the core cools, sleep comes faster. The core body temperature reaches its lowest point, its nadir, approximately 2 hours before habitual wake time. In a person who wakes at 7 a.m., the temperature nadir occurs around 5 a.m. At this point, the core temperature is at approximately 36 to 36.2 degrees Celsius, down 0.6 to 1 degree from the afternoon peak. The temperature nadir is not simply the lowest temperature of the night, it is the temperature at which the most restorative sleep processes are occurring. Slow wave sleep, the deep, delta wave-dominated sleep that is associated with physical and cognitive restoration, is most prevalent and most architecturally complete during the hours surrounding the temperature nadir. Growth hormone secretion peaks during the first slow-wave sleep period, which occurs in the first 2 to 3 hours of sleep and corresponds to the steepest part of the temperature descent. Memory consolidation, which occurs predominantly during slow-wave sleep through the hippocampal neocortical transfer of newly encoded memories, is most efficient at the lower brain temperatures that slow-wave sleep produces. Jan Born at the University of Lübeck, whose research on sleep and memory has been among the most rigorously conducted in sleep neuroscience, published work in Neuroscience and Biobehavioral Reviews showing that the temperature-dependent reduction in neuronal excitability during slow-wave sleep is not a byproduct of rest, but a functional requirement for the slow oscillatory activity that drives the hippocampal neocortical dialogue of memory consolidation. Neurons running at their waking temperature fire at rates that are too rapid and too noisy to support the slow, coordinated oscillation that sleep memory consolidation requires. The lower temperature reduces neuronal excitability to the range that allows the slow oscillations to emerge. The temperature nadir is also the time of highest melatonin concentration. Melatonin, produced by the pineal gland in response to darkness, does not cause sleep directly. It signals the body that it is nighttime and that the conditions for sleep maintenance should be preserved. Melatonin suppresses the cortisol awakening response that would otherwise begin pulling the person toward waking. It maintains the ambient biology of nighttime, including the low temperature set point, for the duration of the dark period. When the temperature nadir is disrupted, when the bedroom is too warm and the core never reaches its minimum, or when exposure to light during the night suppresses melatonin and begins the morning temperature rise prematurely, the slow-wave sleep that depends on the low-temperature environment is compressed or eliminated. The memory consolidation does not complete. The growth hormone release is blunted. The neural restoration of slow-wave sleep is replaced by lighter, less restorative sleep architecture that leaves the person waking with the subjective experience of inadequate rest even after 8 hours in bed. If you're hooked on this story, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Your support means everything and helps me bring you more emotional stories like this one. The thermoregulatory sleep system was calibrated across millions of years of evolution in environments without central heating, without screens, and without synthetic bedding. The environmental temperatures that the system evolved to work with were ambient outdoor temperatures that fell after sunset in whatever climate the individual's ancestors inhabited, providing the natural thermal gradient that the preoptic area uses to drive the core temperature drop. Modern sleeping environments violate 3 aspects of this evolved system simultaneously. The first is ambient temperature. The average bedroom temperature in a temperature-controlled home in the developed world is approximately 19 to 22 degrees Celsius, at or above the upper threshold of the optimal sleep temperature range. At 22 degrees, the body's ability to lose heat from the exposed skin surface is significantly reduced compared to the 15 to 18 degree environments in which the thermoregulatory sleep system produces its deepest architecture. The slow-wave sleep that depends on core temperature reaching its nadir is curtailed when the ambient environment limits the rate of heat dissipation. The second is screen-generated light. Screens emit blue light at wavelengths that activate the melanopsin-containing retinal ganglion cells that signal the suprachiasmatic nucleus that it is daytime, suppressing the melatonin that maintains the low-temperature nocturnal set point. Blue light exposure in the 2 hours before bed delays melatonin onset by approximately 1.5 to 3 hours in sensitive individuals, as Brainard and colleagues at Jefferson University documented in research published in the Journal of Neuroscience. The melatonin delay postpones the preoptic area's activation, delays the peripheral vasodilation, delays the core temperature drop, and delays sleep onset, all from the light of a phone held at reading distance in a dim room. The third is synthetic bedding. Natural fibers, cotton, linen, wool, have hygroscopic properties that allow them to absorb and release moisture from the skin surface, maintaining the microclimate between the person and the bedding in a state that facilitates evaporative cooling. Synthetic fabrics, polyester, nylon, do not absorb moisture effectively, causing the microclimate to become humid and warm, reducing the temperature differential between the skin and the environment, and impairing the heat loss from the skin surface that the thermoregulatory sleep system requires. The body produces sweat during sleep as part of thermoregulation, and if that sweat cannot evaporate effectively into the bedding and from there into the room, the cooling mechanism is impaired. These three environmental disruptions, warm room, screen light, synthetic bedding, each individually reduce sleep quality through the thermoregulatory mechanism. Together, they systematically prevent the core temperature from reaching the nadir at which slow-wave sleep achieves its greatest depth. The relationship between overnight brain temperature and cognitive function the following day is direct and measurable. Matthew Walker at the University of California, Berkeley, whose work on sleep and cognition has been published across decades and summarized in his book Why We Sleep, has described the slow-wave sleep that occurs near the temperature nadir as the most cognitively restorative phase of the sleep cycle, not REM sleep, which restores emotional regulation and creative association, but slow-wave sleep, which restores the hippocampal capacity to encode new information and the prefrontal capacity to maintain working memory. When the temperature nadir is disrupted and slow-wave sleep is curtailed, the hippocampus enters the following day with reduced capacity. You and colleagues at Berkeley, publishing in Nature in 2007, showed that a single night of sleep deprivation produced a 40% reduction in hippocampal activation during an encoding task the following day, compared to a well-slept night. The hippocampus, measured by fMRI, was 40% less responsive to incoming information after one night of inadequate sleep. The temperature mechanism matters here because even in people who spend 8 hours in bed, inadequate core temperature drop, from a warm bedroom or from late-night screen exposure, produces sleep that is architecturally shallower and less restorative than the 8 hours of sleep the person believes they are getting. The cognitive consequence is the same as partial sleep deprivation, but without the subjective sense that sleep was deficient, because the person was in bed for the full period. This is the mechanism behind the experience that many adults over 40 describe, sleeping a full night and waking tired. Not tired from insufficient time in bed, 7 or 8 hours were spent there, tired from sleep that never achieved the temperature-dependent depth that restores the hippocampus and the prefrontal cortex. The sleep was present. The deep, cold temperature slow-wave sleep within it was not. The cognitive decline that most adults attribute to age after 50, slower word retrieval, reduced working memory capacity, difficulty concentrating for long periods, has a substantial slow-wave sleep component. Slow-wave sleep percentage decreases with age, beginning in the 30s and declining progressively through the 50s and 60s. Some of this decline is intrinsic to aging of the sleep regulatory circuits, but a measurable portion of it is attributable to the thermal environment conditions that progressively worsen slow-wave sleep architecture in middle and later life. The warmer rooms, the screens, the synthetic bedding that prevents the core temperature from reaching the nadir at which the brain's most restorative sleep occurs. The intervention is environmental, not pharmacological, and it addresses each of the three disruptions the previous chapter identified. Room temperature, 15 to 19 degrees Celsius, is the established optimal range. Most people find 17 to 18 degrees comfortable once the initial coolness at bedding down is managed. The discomfort of entering a cool bed is resolved within 5 to 10 minutes, as the bedding warms to skin temperature while the ambient air remains cool. The cool air on the face and exposed skin throughout the night, the physiological stimulus for the ongoing heat loss that maintains the core at or near its temperature nadir, is the environmental condition the thermoregulatory sleep system is calibrated for. The temperature of the sleep environment matters more than the temperature of the bedding. A person sleeping under a warm duvet in a cool room is creating the optimal combination. Warm bedding provides the comfort and insulation that prevents the body from expending energy on shivering, while the cool ambient air at the face and head allows the radiant heat loss that maintains the core temperature decline. A person sleeping under minimal covers in a warm room is doing the opposite: insufficient insulation plus inadequate ambient cooling. Pre-sleep skin warming, 20 to 30 minutes before intended sleep time, warming the feet and hands through a warm bath, a warm foot soak, or warm socks worn for 20 minutes and then removed at sleep, produces peripheral vasodilation that accelerates the core to periphery heat transfer. The core temperature drops faster. Sleep onset latency decreases. This is the Cauchy mechanism applied deliberately. The warm bath before bed, specifically a bath or shower at 40 to 42 degrees Celsius, taken 1 to 2 hours before bed, is one of the most consistently effective non-pharmacological sleep interventions in the controlled trial literature. A meta-analysis by Hughaeg and colleagues at UT Austin, published in Sleep Medicine Reviews in 2019, analyzed 13 studies and found that a warm bath or shower taken 1 to 2 hours before bed at this temperature significantly improved sleep onset latency, sleep quality, and slow-wave sleep percentage. The mechanism is not relaxation. It is thermoregulatory. The warm water heats the skin, maximally dilates the peripheral vessels, drives a large rapid heat loss from the core as the person exits the bath into the cooler ambient air, and produces a faster and deeper core temperature drop than would occur through the gradual pre-sleep vasodilation alone. Screen cessation, 60 to 90 minutes before intended sleep time, allows the melanopsin signal suppression from the screen's blue light to begin clearing and melatonin onset to begin on schedule. If screen use before bed is unavoidable, blue light blocking glasses at wavelengths below 550 nanometers attenuate the melanopsin activation from screens sufficiently to reduce melatonin suppression. This is not a complete solution. The cognitive arousal from screen content is a separate issue from the photic melatonin suppression, but it addresses the thermoregulatory component by preserving the melatonin-mediated low-temperature set point. Bedding material: natural fiber bedding, cotton or linen for warmer climates, merino wool for cooler, maintains the hygroscopic properties that allow the skin's nocturnal sweat to evaporate into the fabric, and from there into the cooled room, maintaining the skin bedding microclimate temperature differential that allows ongoing cooling across the night. The specific bedding choice becomes more important for people who run warm, who sweat significantly during sleep, or who are sleeping in rooms at the warmer end of the optimal range. The outcome of these environmental corrections is not a different amount of sleep. It is a different quality of the sleep that occurs. The slow-wave sleep that the temperature nadir enables, the sleep that consolidates memory, releases growth hormone, restores hippocampal capacity, and produces the subjective sense of having actually rested, is the same total hours, but with a deeper, more restorative architecture. The temperature dropped, the brain cooled, the repair ran. That sequence is the one that evolution produced, that the preoptic area executes, and that every modern sleeping environment is either supporting or disrupting, one bedroom degree at a time. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you loved this story, check out the other videos on your screen now. I think you'll really enjoy them. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. See you in the next story. Repair ran. That sequence is the one that evolution produced, that the preoptic area executes, and that every modern sleeping environment is either supporting or disrupting, one bedroom degree at a time. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you loved this story, check out the other videos on your screen now. I think you'll really enjoy them. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. See you in the next story.